So yeah, so it's good to be back here. I'm here basically giving a lecture on the legacy of racism in America, where do we go from here. And I'm an actor, as you guys know, and from Virginia. And I did the movie, and when I got into film, I kind of was, I don't know your experience for me, but I'm from North Virginia, and I come from poverty, very tough place. When I went to school, I got a wrestling scholarship, and my advisor told me, you should get into kinesiology, you should get into PE. But for me, I said, I'm trying to make the most money. I got into computers. Graduated in computers, and within 4 months, I became an actor. A guy saw me in Dallas and said he thought I had a look that could help the business because there were no young actors. So I said, why not? I'll try it. Still, for me, it was all about consuming. How much money can I make? It looks like I can make a lot more money fast. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take care of my parents. The same kind of ideals most of us may hold. And then I came across Pride. Came across a film that dealt with the injury of racism and discrimination, and it changed me. And it changed me and made me want to pursue projects that could deal with our injury as a community in a way that I could come back and give back. And then I did Great Debators, and that changed my life. The research that came with understanding the injury and pain of a young man that doesn't really understand his environment, all he knows is that he's in a position where he's inferior, and he has this ever-present anger, which George literally talks about in the book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. I identified with that, and I saw an opportunity to use that to parallel the plight of the black man now, and that became my journey. I called Brian Davis, who's my mentor and very close friend, and we decided to use the film as a tool to create a curriculum, and to go to these universities, we teach at an alternative school in Brooklyn, and to figure out ways to use debate to promote literacy in our community, and not literacy to get an A, or to just be the best student, but understanding our responsibility as African students to our community. What can we do? How can we prepare ourselves? What tools do we need to go in and deal with the roots of racism and how it's affected us now? And how do we peel off that feeling of inferiority that we're born with and that we're taught almost when we're born. One of the things I'm going to talk about tonight in the speech is about the doll test. Anyone not familiar with the doll test? So you're not? Google it if you can. Just YouTube it. Just understanding why our children feel their inferiority at such a young age. Are we inferior? Has there been something systemic that has happened to us that we have never dealt with? Being in a country that calls itself the greatest country in the world, and that's quick to run to the aid of everyone else, we've never pulled back the carpet and dealt with the injury that we live with right now, which is white supremacy and racism and how it affects everyday culture. So that's why I'm here, and I wanted to make sure I came in to talk to the students, because if this school is anything like the University of Oklahoma, there's not a huge presence, and there's not a lot of angles to affect change on a policy level in the college. We went to Penn State first, went to the University of Oklahoma. We were in a situation at Penn State where the Klan marched through town. There were death threats. A young man was killed. It was kept from getting national attention. We had to come through that. Being in a place like Oklahoma, and one day a teammate saying, "Hey, that's a lynching tree. There's a picture you can find in there where people were hanging from that tree," and just trying to deal with where do I fit in all of that, and trying to separate myself from this mode of assimilation. Because when I was young, I don't know about you guys, my teacher said, you can make it from around, you can get from around these niggas, basically. These teachers that didn't understand our experience, that flew in to save us with their pity, and had us feeling like the people we were surrounded with were inferior. So everything inside of us we wanted to, for me, was attach to Western culture and assimilate, turn my back in a way that if I can make it, I've made it. And so many of us are sick of that now. There's a statistic for every African-American male, dealing with males for right now, that goes to college or gets accepted to college, there's 100 that get arrested. The prison industrial complex is a problem for our sisters and brothers. So it's like, how do we deal with that? And the only way we're going to deal with it is by dealing with it. But anytime we're being taught that we are inferior, that it doesn't matter, then we're forced to stand on the side of the line that says that we're less than, that we fail because we're less than. So then what do? We attach to the only, angles and channels where we see success in our lives, in our experience. And so often it becomes athletics and entertainment. Are those things bad? No, but I feel like I'm an entertainer, so I sure if someone wants to make it as an engineer, they can do it. And they can do it not just by being inspired to get good grades, but the knowledge of self and identity, and understanding who they are as people, understanding they come from a rich history. So that's, I don't want to come here and talk you guys to death, but I want to just give you an idea of who I am, what I'm doing, why I'm here, and one of the things I like to do, especially when I come and speak in front of African American students that are small populations, talk about the issues that you guys see, and try to promote some kind of mechanism for change so you guys, or to us together, we can work on ways to deal with it. And that was one of the things we did at Penn State with working to get the Paul Robeson Center and working for the curriculum and the students to come in and not have to experience the culture shock in the way that we experience culture shock, and understand so we can mend the relationship between us. That being said, I'm going to let Brian talk.
I just want to speak real briefly. Nate is one of my best friends. He's like my little brother. I'm a little bit older, not too much older. But I met Nate, and I always like to say this, because Nate steps up. And first of all, good afternoon, y'all. We just jumped in and started talking. But my name is Brian Favors. I'm an educator. I'm an adjunct instructor at Medgar Evers College, and I'm an educational consultant. So I work in Queens and in Brooklyn. I work in the Bronx. And I work with urban kids, teaching our history and using our history and culture to inspire people to learn. Real quick, I always say this because Nate steps in and he's fresh and clean. You watch him very well spoken, very confident. And I remember when Nate was a freshman at Penn State with the Timbs, with the swag, and always a talented brother. Always a talented brother, but I always tell this little story because when he got to Penn State, he was a wrestler. He was one of the only brothers on the wrestling team. And he was always getting in fights. And I worked for the athletic department, so I was always hearing about this troubled kid. But Nate was my dude. Like me and Nate right off the bat were partners, and I'll never forget it. He said, we were talking like, well, you got to channel your energy in a different way. I remember Nate saying, man, these white guys make all these racist comments. I remember they were holding bags, and they were like, oh, hold the bag, Benson. Y'all remember that show, Benson? And they thought it was funny, but Nate was like on some hood, like, no, we're not going to have this. And I remember him saying, they make these racist comments, and I don't have the word. I know it's messed up, but I don't have the words to check them. So I knocked their ass out, right? And he kept getting in trouble, and I just think it's ironic that 5, 6 years later, now he's a spokesperson, right? He was in this movie where he used his words as weapons and made intellectualism kind of cool, even in the hood. He can come to Bed-Stuy where I live and speak, and all the hood kids is like, okay, like I read that book. He made it cool, and our whole campaign has been about tapping that intellectualism in the hood, because we got so much potential and power. He and I both were athletes. I played football. Had me and him, had he not been a wrestler, had I not been a football player, I'd still be in California, probably like a lot of my partners. Like not ever recognizing who I was, buying into the fact that I was a dumb jock, never knowing that I come from this intellectual tradition and I had a purpose and I could change the world. So I always like to say that because you see Nate, it looks like he's so polished now everywhere we go, but I watched him. A lot of people in Hollywood lose themselves, right? They go to Hollywood if they got a little bit of realness, and I'm from Cali, so I know how that goes. But I watched him after the Great Debators, and we had kind of separated, but I watched, after the Great Debators, man, I saw a young man. The conversations we were having, because I used to get at him all the time when he was younger, like, brother, you need to understand. He'd be like, okay, B, that's what's up. Let me get to this party, right? He was Henry Lowe. But I watched this movie, and I remember him saying, B, I'm doing these lectures, right? And, it was when Obama was running for president, so everybody was talking about race, and I remember him saying, yo, people are listening to what I have to say. So I watched this brother turn down money, a lot of money, for movies because he's not going to play no pimp, right? He ain't going to put on no dress, like he has his principle. And, Paul Robeson has this quote. He says, the artist must elect to fight for freedom or slavery. I've made my choice. And I just want to say one thing, man. I'm watching this young brother, not because he's in movies. This brother, when you go to L.A., you go through Watson Common, them kids know him. Like he has made a decision to use his platform to be a light in the community. And one of the messages that we want to put out to our people particularly, for every single one of us that's on this college campus, I don't know who's from the hood and who's not. I live in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, where every Nate Parker, there are hundreds and hundreds of lost young brothers who have potential, young brothers and sisters, but it's never been tapped. If you remember that movie, when Denzel Washington, when he's about to cut the dude in the beginning, Denzel Washington catches his hand. saves his life. If he cuts this dude, he's another part of the prison industrial complex. So we believe that education, real education, not Christopher Columbus discovered land that's fully occupied, knowing about who you are before slavery. When we were at Penn State University, we fought. We said, wait a minute, they getting all this money from the state. We don't have no classes. They cutting black studies, right? This cultural center right here, and I don't know the history, but I'm sure it came out of struggle.
Yes, sir.
Students struggling. I don't even know the history, but I know everything we got comes out of struggle. So the same way that he uses this platform as an actor, you know, he got some plans, getting behind the scenes, making some movies that tell some real stories about our past. They don't have us, you know, stanky leg, like some other images. The same way that he's doing this, we want our community to know there is greatness in us. You're going to be tempted to make money and adjust to the injustice. All of us will be tempted, right? But while you guys are in school, start to identify what the issues are that plague our community and see if you can use your education to transform that. Because we need educators, we need business people, we need political science people, but not just people who can go work for other people. Maybe you got to work for other people in the beginning, but people who have a vision to break the cycle. Because if we don't do it, it ain't going to get done. It is not going to get done. So a lot of what he's going to be talking about is us taking on the responsibility to be the leaders that our community so desperately need. You know, and it is possible because we are the proof of that. Us right here, just a little over 100 years ago, you get killed, you get beat for trying to read a book, right? I always tell myself, what if Harriet Tubman had the internet? You know, what if how did Marcus Garvey get millions of dollars in the 1920s? What can we do now? A lot of what's stopping us, we don't know who we are. And if we don't know who we are, we don't know our potential. So when I was younger, they used to talk about that, I'm from Africa, I didn't really understand it. But knowledge itself is power, y'all. We come from greatness. We had math and science while Europeans were still in caves. And that's not to say we're superior, but it's certainly to say we ain't inferior, right? So with knowledge of self, there is great potential. So I just wanted to, aside from the fact that he's in movies and people, oh, you know Denzel? Nah, man, this brother's a foot soldier. This brother has turned down millions of dollars because he has decided, first of all, he's a man of faith, and he has decided, I'm going to be responsible for the condition of my community. And what we're trying to do is just get, you know, trying to get our people to see that. And all of you are blessed. All of you have had opportunities that the masses of us don't have. So that each one teach one, excuse my language, but that's bullshit. Because if you only teach one person, you better create an institution, something that is responsible for more than that. Because for every one of you, if you just get one person, man, if you come around my hood, right now it's 20 brothers on my block selling crack, right? So each one teach one. No, man, you better be an architect. You better create something that's funneling, that create new schools. We need so much more, and a lot of times these schools, that's why God bless the Cultural Center. God bless people who supplement your education. Because a lot of times these schools aren't going to teach us to do that. They're going to teach us how to perpetuate the system, to go get a job working for people. But if I were to ask anybody business majors in here, how much money did the black community spend last year?
It's like 1.3 billion, wasn't it?
900 billion we spend annually. And this is like Cabot Smiley report. This ain't even counting like all the stuff we spend for weed and all this stuff that doesn't get reported. No. But the point is, you graduate from here, you'll be prepared to go work for Charles Schwab, but you're not going to be prepared to do what Marcus Garvey did. Because if we get 15% of our own $900 billion, we got reparations. You know? But we're not even learning about that. We don't even realize that we can create schools that begin to teach our kids who they really are. Because when you're in the hood teaching this, all them thugs is in the front row raising their hands. So we have to have a vision. We have to know who we are. We have to know our greatness. And we have to have a vision that says, I'm not just going to adjust to the injustice. I'm going to break this cycle. He brought up this book, Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. It's no coincidence, y'all, that those of us who came here in chains are the ones in chains. That ain't no coincidence, you know. But a lot of times, we're not learning this. So we have to know who we are so that we can maximize our potential. And I just wanted to throw that out there real quick because I'm aside from the acting, man, I'm just proud that this brother has become a man. A man. See, a man man is a giver, a boy is a taker. Okay? So that's my
So I think we should open it up just to see what you guys want to talk about, any questions you may have, or just things that are happening. Can everybody see me? I think I should.
Yeah, you better stand up.
You know, and Brian, you know, he's my mentor. Everything that I know, it's like Brian sends me, you know, a book a week, and I, you know, read about a book a week, just to be prepared. You know what I mean? Like a lot of things he told me about, like, you know, Harriet Tubman wasn't trying to learn how to read and write from A. You know, she was trying to forge documents to free people. You know what I mean? It's like we need to understand marriage. You know, we need to understand that urgency, and that's why, like, this is the reason why, and all the acting stuff. I always say I'm an activist first. I'm learning. I'm in the process of trying to figure this out. How do we deal with this injury? Because it's my belief that 20 years from now, if things keep going the way they are, you know, you know, in New York City, 25% graduation rate.
28% graduated, black men graduated from high school.
Right.
By 2020, 50% of black men, if the stats keep going, are going to be under some form of criminal justice control. This is reality.
And what does that mean for us? Because there's things we could assimilate and say, well, I don't want to be one of them, so I'm going to make sure I'm protected. But we can make sure we feel as a community and fix this thing. But it's going to take us. It's going to take college degrees. It's going to take not relying on the leaders that are saying that they are leaders now. It's not, and it is, we can't wait for policy and political leaders. You know, so anything you want to say, any questions?
What's going on here? What's going on in Mizzou?
Speak candidly.
Let's be real. We heard about some issues that happened last year or something. What's going on, y'all?
The cotton thing.
What is your community working together, or are there divisions amongst us? Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
And we travel all around the country, so this is a microcosm of everything. What's going on, y'all?
Okay. Well, I'm not going to talk about like the cotton balls from last year, because I'm going to say let's move on. That was somebody else did that to us. This year, I think really there's been a lot of fights and stuff going on between black people, and I think that's one of our biggest issues. Like, we can't tell other people what they can and cannot do, but we can control what we do to each other, and we're not.
Anybody, you know, when we talk about this is a lot of what we talk about, right? Because I'm under the belief that the worst part about racism isn't even how our oppressor sees us, it's how we've been conditioned to see ourselves. Right? Because slavery was more about mental slavery than even physical slavery, because on a lot of plantations, we outnumbered master 8-1, South Carolina and Mississippi. But I remember my grandma used to always talk about crabs in a bucket. As soon as the black bird tried to come up, somebody put, how many heard that? Crabs in a bucket. Where did that come from? Was Kunta Kinte, anybody watch See Roots? Was Kunta Kinte scared of his peers? Like, no, where does that crabs in a bucket mentality come from? Why every school we go to, everywhere we go to, the Kappas is about to fight the Qs. There might as well be blood and crip, right? The gospel choir thinks they're holier than thou. Then you got the conscious people with the locks, like y'all some sellouts. Then you got the football players who run everything. Am I right? Okay, well, is that
right? You've been to Mizzou.
Because you know why? Because once you know the condition of your people, this is everywhere. Where does that come from?
I was going to say, I think that a big difference between now, like our generation and maybe, you know, your Marcus Garvey, Davis, and, you know, something like that, there were issues going on politically. You know, I feel like that within the black community, all we had was each other, you know what I'm saying? Because, you know, in order to combat racism, we wanted to establish black studies programs or whatever, you know, like we only had each other. And I think that with the rise of technology and just kind of like overall laziness, I mean, everything is instant, you know, it's gratification is right there, it's right now. I think the overall desire to just work is just gone because a lot of stuff isn't right away, or just because we aren't up against some of those same issues. Not that they don't still exist, not that we aren't still, I think, holding ourselves back in a, you know, in a sense, but just because, I don't know, I guess I'm trying to say is that because we can go to a restaurant and sit down, or because, you know, we can
There's a
go
perception
to
thing that
institutions
changed,
like
right?
Mizzou, that, you know, there's this almost an attitude that we're done, you know, like it's over, or, you know, we've arrived, you know what I'm saying?
Self-hate, one of the things he's going to talk about tonight is when you look at racism, oftentimes we just think of like Ku Klux Klan. Like, I hate you there, that's a racism. But we don't understand that self-hate is when you hate yourself and you hate your reflection, right? So when he brought up the doll test, by the time kids are 4 years old, they're already clear, this is the smart doll, This is the pretty dog. The black one is the inferior, criminal, ugly dog. When you hate yourself, you hate your reflection. Anybody ever heard of Willie Lynch? The legend of Willie Lynch? It was divide and conquer. Whether or not you believe Willie Lynch is real or a myth, every plantation was about dividing and conquer. So and you got to know the roots of the tree if you want to understand the fruit, right? In the plantation, I got slave narratives of slaves fighting each other over whose slave master got more. My slave master got all this. Oh, nigga, my slave master got this, and now we gonna fight. If I wanna run away from slavery, they gonna get a head overseer to come in to go get me and with me. It was all based on divide and conquer. Tupac and Biggie. Two partners have a little beef, right? Something they could have sat down and squashed. But then Vibe magazine. Now they got East Coast versus West Coast, and it's selling. It's selling. Now, these two people, now it's East Coast versus the West Coast. So we have to understand that 24 hours a day when we listening to music, we not only do we dislike ourselves, we dislike our reflection, right? We are racist against us. When we say, what is good hair? What's good hair, y'all? What's good hair? Good hair is hair that blows in the wind like gin. And I'm not saying anything is wrong with her hair, but just know this, sisters. For thousands of years, you loved your hair in Africa. It was not until you were brought here, had to put a scarf over your head and pick cotton and getting headlights and not able to take care of your hair because you were the slave, right? And now you're picking cotton, tired, not even able to be who you were in Africa with your fine braids, right? And now you're looking at the white girl sipping lemonade on the porch and being treated like a goddess, and now you say, well, that's good hair. And then you see the mulatto, and she got a little hair that looked more like hers, and now she got some clothes on, like you got rags, so you say, that's good hair. That's mental slavery. That's trauma. When you feel ugly, guess how you act? Ugly, right? So the only reason that I bring that up is because if we had mechanisms in place that cultivated our unity, that told us, see, the Jewish community has a slogan, never forget. In Brooklyn, where I live, Jews have their own buses, their own community within the community. And every single kid knows their history, goes to rituals. They never forget. And they have the power to shut down Wall Street and Hollywood as a minority in America. But they know their culture. We take pride in being niggas. How many of us are involved in some kind of mechanism that is countering the 24 hours a day self-hate? Big pimping, on the radio, throwing money in the air. Poorest people in the world, in the country, wasting money. What is there to counter that? See, at my school, and I got all these hood kids that have been kicked out, I'm shut up. But knowledge of self is violence prevention. We don't have no metal detectors. We've had one fight in 8 years because we learning about this. So if somebody cuts someone off they say, oh, that's that Willie Lynch. They understand community division was scripted. In my neighborhood, I live in a black neighborhood that's being gentrified. If you walk down my block, you're going to get sweated. Like, look at this nigga. But if a white person is walking down the block, man, we have a bed and breakfast, so we have foreigners. My wife and I have foreigners who come and rent our place. They'll come from like Sweden. And it's a blood block. It's Bloods. But they'll walk down the street, can I have a cigarette? They don't even know, and people treat them with respect. But if you walk down my block, you getting took, bruh. Because we don't like our reflection. We in our own mind believe that the white man's ice is colder. So we got some internal healing to do, y'all. We got some internal healing to do. That's why people flock to this cultural center, so that we could have a space that we could come to and heal and build and celebrate our culture, right?
Yeah. Let me ask you all to address this. Travis Smiley says something, and that this generation is the first generation that's always been able to sit in the front of the bus. And so they don't understand the struggle to get this cultural center because they haven't had the struggle. And so this generation has been more in tune to the entertainment aspect of life as opposed to the educational aspect of life. Like, you know, in a couple of months we'll have Black History Month, and I can assure you from being here 4.5 years, when we have Black History events, I have more white students in this building than I will black. And so, is that, you know, common where you at in Oklahoma, or?
Yeah, well, I'm in Los Angeles now.
No, I mean when you were a student.
Oh, absolutely. This, and what Ron said, this is the same institution. We're at Penn State together.
We walk around the same thing.
It's the same thing, and it doesn't change at all.
Arkansas,
the same. And even when we go and speak, We get the African American students together and they say the same thing.
At black colleges, at Wiley College,
Right,
same
exactly.
thing, same conversation.
Right. But what we don't understand is, like Brian says, we don't understand the history. We don't understand where it comes from. Like, we don't understand the root of what's going on. So it's like when we talk, we can sit at the front of the bus, right? But we're a culture of assimilation. I learned it. My teachers told me, you can be as good, you can get away, and you're going to make it. So everything I did was not rooted in love and unity. I didn't care. I could care less about what you're doing, because this teacher that's from this affluent neighborhood just came in, identified me, looked me in my eye, pulled me to a side, and I already feel like she's better, and she's giving us charity for being here, and telling me that I can do better than everyone else. So it's like that in itself is a division. You know, so in schools, we're not, the problem is, what I believe is we're not learning about the racism that exists now. We're dealing with the third form of racism. If you look it up in the dictionary, racism, the first is white superiority. What's been, one person, one group, whatever is inherent, you're better than because of your race, right?
That we all buy into.
That is the sickness. The second one is institutional racism. That's what makes people apathetic. Well, we can't change it, so it is what it is. The third one is KKK. And that's what everybody wants, everyone wants to jump on the overt bandwagon so they can take the side, the good side, and say, yeah, they're ignorant. If you walk out to any random person, they can be from the most, have a racist, and you talk to, just say, hey, so, yeah, man, is racism an issue? Like, yeah, there are some ignorant ones. The people that put the cotton on this field a year ago, you just randomly talk to them, not knowing they would still say, because in their mind, like we're walking with a professor that was like, they just did a prank. On one hand, he was trying to say how bad it was, but being that he identifies with them, he protected them, not even knowing he was protected. They also rode around on the tiger. You know what I mean? I'm like, well, white supremacy is real. Like, you don't understand what happened. What does it take to go out to the store and buy 500 bags of cotton, right? Go out, plan this. Put this out. That's all three forms of racism, because there's an institution that didn't deal with it properly. It wasn't national news, because I didn't hear about it until he told me. There's white supremacy because they thought they could get away with that, and not only get away with it, but the institution, there would be a certain population of the institution that would would listen, hear it, laugh inside of themselves. I'm in Hollywood. What happens when Mel Gibson says you're gonna get raped by a pack of niggas? What does everyone say? And this one gets to me. I can't believe he said that. He said that? Not he felt it. Not he's been feeling that. Not this is a man that we supported in Lethal Weapon. Like, you Danny Glover, you can't be racist. You know what I'm saying? But like, not that he felt this inherent inside of his soul, but that he said it out loud.
And was comfortable. And didn't even realize the injury. When you bring up cotton, y'all, do you know what we had to go through, y'all? Like that's why when the Jewish community, you can't even, if you watch All About the Benjamins, baby, listen to that song, stack chips like Hebrews, it's cut off. And that ain't even negative. He said, we stacking chips like Jews, but the Jewish community said, don't be bringing us up in your music, right? So they have cultural authority. If you breathe an anti-Semitic thought, because they have control of their community and they have a standard, you will not. But with us, people make jokes, and you guys don't even realize that when they dump cotton, that is the epitome of cultural disrespect. You know what we had to go through? And America is the superpower that it is because of cotton. Because of our great-great-grandparents. Without us picking cotton, America is not who they are. Without slave labor, what we looked at last night? $600 trillion worth of labor.
How many hours? It was unbelievable. Just free labor. And how so many companies in the Fortune 500 have benefited from slavery. But that is what happens. What we need to understand is once we start dealing with slavery in a real way, when I say real, looking at the root and saying, wow, there's been a distribution of wealth. Something has happened. Because if you ignore all that, then you have to believe you're inferior. You have to look at your people, even if you don't personally, you have to look at your people when you go home, because we all go home, and all our friends and family ain't in college. And we go home and we're just like, damn. Everyone look at, damn, what's up, bro? In your head, damn, what you doing, man, shit? Damn. Right? Right? And you start feeling, I don't even want to go home, I'm just going to stay at school. Man, I'll stay home for 2 days, and I just want to get away from it. Right? Why? Because we feel like we're inferior. If we don't look at the fact that the whole reason why the slums, the ghettos, when slavery ended, the ghettos are the same ghettos that they were back then. Everyone just sat down. Where are you going to go? They were forced into sharecropping and convict leasing. With the convict lease system, and I'm going to talk about it tonight, it'd be like, all right, you're not a slave no more, but,
one of the laws you get arrested for, being too loud in the presence of a white woman.
Your public display of racial etiquette. What
So
is
now
that?
you're a prisoner.
So if
Now
you're
you're a
too
slave.
loud, racial etiquette, what does that mean? That basically saying anything that makes you black, anything that makes you a person of African, anything that you can do if your lips are too big. Vagrancy. Vagrancy, if you look at the definition, is moving from place to place. People were getting arrested for vagrancy.
Just
right?
like they get arrested now in my hood for sitting in front of their stoop.
Right.
My kids get arrested for loitering in front of their own building. They don't have a backyard. So where are they supposed to go, right? So my kids are so desensitized to stopping and getting searched when the police roll up, and it be thugs that will fight you if you look at them wrong. But the police roll up, they've been conditioned. They don't even realize the rest of the world ain't living like that. But if you don't understand slavery, or better yet, who you were before slavery, you think that that's just normal.
Because if you believe that our existence started in a slave ship, which we've been taught to believe, the second we see our reflection in the history books is when we're packed in there. You know that picture. And we become ashamed. I don't know if it's still in history books, but when I was coming up, I'm 30, so I'm a little bit older than you guys. But the picture, I get ashamed when we turn that page. I don't want to talk about that. I felt like that was our inception. That was when we were born. The birth of our nation came out of the breast to back, feces, babies being born, death, smallpox, throwing up. And I didn't want to, let's get past that. But I didn't understand that there was a rich history before that, before they took us. I didn't know Timbuktu, Mali. I didn't understand. I didn't understand the mathematicians it took to do the things that they did. When you look at the pyramids, you look at Aladdin, they'll make you believe everyone that ever did anything was white. Right? But to the victor go the spoils. They're telling our history. We're not forcing ourselves to get our own history. Right? It's like we don't even think about the fact that we can go through our whole history book and never see ourselves, except for when it's tied to just pain. We don't have the whole story. So we talk about black on black. Everybody's fighting. Yeah, everybody's fighting. We're frustrated. We're angry. Vacant esteem, ever-present anger. You have to get this book called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome by Dr. Joy Leary.
Dr. Joy Leary.
You
Joy, her and she got divorced. Dr. Joy Degree.
We
Just put in post-traumatic slave syndrome, and it's a must-read.
I spoke in Kansas, and what we did was I had a guy that sponsored books for the whole program. So all these people got this book, and I'm getting text messages every day. I let Ron read it every day. Oh my God, I didn't know this. When you don't know, you don't know, right? And this isn't just a black issue. Like, white people suffer from white supremacy. We've suffered from white supremacy. The way we look at ourselves is real. All of us need to heal.
We just talked to a white class, an all-white class, and they were like, well, what do we do? And we were explaining to them, there are white authors. I do staff developments with teachers. Before you can do anything, you have to deal with the injury, the legacy of racism that you bring to the table, that says you are superior to everybody, that says you can judge everybody in every other nation and think you're better. You got to deal with the fact that oftentimes your perception of dealing with racial issues is to bring the poor black up to your level. So before you can help me, see, we don't need charity. We need to put back what was taken from us. In the same way we suffer from an inferiority complex, what does it mean to come from a culture that used to burn us alive and sell our penises as souvenirs? Nat Turner got skinned alive. We got this book, 100 Years of Lynching, that breaks down 100 years of lynching in news articles, and when you read it, it ain't saying that it's wrong. It's like 3 niggers were lynched today, right after church. Look at those without sanctuary pictures. People leaving church, little girls with their church suits on, watching us hang from trees. What does it mean to come from a culture that would tell people in your books that Christopher Columbus discovered a land that's fully occupied with human beings?
And we're the greatest nation because we birthed an idea.
So there are white people who are very clear that we got to heal from our superiority complex. Tim Wise, right? Tim Tyson, right? Gary Howard. These are people that ain't looking at dealing with racism by helping us. They trying to help their people because they've been so trained in a Eurocentric mindset that piece of them has been robbed.
Once we learn that about ourselves, just what we went through to the degree. Like we see a movie like, I always use the example of Braveheart, right? Who has not seen Braveheart? Okay, you see Braveheart, it's
Getting old.
I just got a text message that said somebody on campus just reported to this.
Yeah, I mean.
Stop it.
The campus is locked down?
Yeah, I got that text too.
Today.
As you were speaking. Yeah.
This one.
In the hospital? What did it say?
What did it say?
Well, the first one said, the first one I got is there was a shooting at the hospital on campus. The second one said somebody on campus shooting for students.
In the hospital?
I don't know where.
Does it say the Black Cultural Center?
No, I was thinking that too. Like, oh
That's what I'm saying. Can we be real? Can we be real?
But, yeah, he's gonna figure it out. So let's just mean
Hey, y'all, real quick. What we say, I know we just came in and just boom, white supremacy. But what we talking about? Does that make sense? How many of y'all thinking, what in the hell is these brothers talking about?
If you are, then please raise
Yeah,
your hand so we
please.
can talk about it. Go, please.
I mean, I get what you're saying about the whole systematic racism and how we just institutionalize believe that. Because my mom taught me about Black history and all that stuff, so I know who I am. But I know people who grew up, they don't know who they are, basically. And I don't know, like, around here, it's just, we just like pushed to the side, I guess.
But that's what, King said, there's no progress without struggle. You know what I mean? Like, I welcome, especially, I don't know, like I said, I'm a Christian, and I know God is on the side of the oppressed. And if we can identify with the fact that we're being pushed around for whatever reason, in 2010, on this campus, something needs to be done. But the people that can change it are in this room. We all have the power. The worst thing that can happen is that we can become apathetic. We can say, you know what, man, it ain't going to change. I'm going to get mine. Just like you said, your mom taught you, right? Well, you have to understand the sickness of the exception. We can't identify the exception to the rule as the barometer for the
You
community.
got a black president.
President Obama, I've been told to my face, man, it was a good talk, but Obama, with a straight face. Nothing like, in case you didn't know, so you probably didn't have to do that speech, but Obama, it's like, wait a minute. Obama isn't the president of black people, and he's not speaking to our experience. I campaigned for him. Yes. Is it progress? Yes. On a certain level, yes. But on another, we have more brothers in prison than ever before. We talked about when the convict leasing system happened, where you could take a brother, okay, slavery is over, but guess what? You're going to work for me anyway. You're not going anywhere. You're either going to stay because I housed your father and your father's father, or you're going to stay because, you sharecropping, I'm going to force you to pay me back. Or, if you don't, then I'm going to say, hey, you know what? He looked at me and I felt threatened, arrest him. Right? Now lease him back to me for 30 years.
That was the deal that slave masters made with the government after they had to free the slaves.
Because the country would have went bankrupt. Think about it. Think about a country that's so dependent on slavery. You know what I'm saying? In Lincoln, you got to look up Lincoln racist quote. Look at the Lincoln Douglas
the Great Emancipator.
1858. He said, I don't think that they're blacks. I don't think they're equal. I don't think they should intermarry. I don't think that they deserve to be jurors. But they shouldn't have.
They are inferior.
They're inferior, and I choose the side of superior.
But they shouldn't be denied all rights.
The last line said, but they shouldn't be denied everything.
And he let Frederick Douglass come to his house.
Right.
And everybody,
So he
oh
could've
my
said, I'm not
God,
racist.
what a great person.
Frederick
Douglass is my friend. Just because you got a black friend, first of all, I tell white people, they say, I'm not a racist. I say, look, I'm a recovering white supremacist. I'm trying to love myself. There was a time when I thought I was too good for a black woman, my own reflection. So if I'm healing from white supremacy, right, trying to learn that good hair ain't just hair that blows in the wind, I know your ass can't be healed from it. No, but that's reality. That don't mean you're a bad person. That don't mean that you're a part of the Klan. But if you don't have a healing, you are going to, like them kids, that's why the dog test is so significant, because those kids are, if a kid tell you ugly and you stink, you know you ugly and you stink, because kids is honest. So the kids in their race socialization tells everything.
Not a shooting on campus.
Oh, okay.
I called MUPD, they said that was not a shooting on campus.
One thing that I've noticed since I've been here, because I've only been here for 1 year, and I came from a pretty predominantly white area right outside Chicago, and it's been, how do you stay in touch with your black community? And also, because obviously we're at a predominantly white institution, so, I mean, we talk about this a little bit in ABJ, that you have to be in tune with both, but to try to balance both becomes really, really hard. How do you do that?
When you say balance both, what?
Balance being involved with the black community, but also, I mean, you have to be involved with a lot of the white community. Yeah, because at the end of the day, you still have to get a certain place, and just limiting yourself to one community isn't going to get you there.
No, I was going to say, I wouldn't agree in the sense that it's the double consciousness we all have to deal with. I mean, when I went to Penn State, I used to talk to Brian about it. I was like, man, I have to be able to, having to be able to talk to Brian, go, what's up, man? Whatever, Tim's, whatever. But then having to be able to interact with, with European Americans. And I remember saying, man, it's crazy how someone can be like, like the European sister right there in the back. She chooses to be here, right? When you think about it, though, she could go her whole existence and never, ever, ever come in contact with anyone that's African American.
Let alone a whole room full of black people.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? Like, it takes being uncomfortable for all of us. But what you got to understand is what's at stake. You know what I mean? If you really, like what we're talking about, when you know your history, boom, know where we come from, then know the statistics about the education system and privatized schools and how this separation is killing us, right? How the resources are being taken out of these schools, and they say, well, why don't we fix schools with government money, right? When we can just rely on parents that can afford to put their kids in a school that's really going to educate them. So then they're picking the rows from the concrete charter schools, and they're just kids. All the dumb kids are just left together like, fuck it. What am I going to do? Then it makes sense that the dropout rate is so high. But if you just hear the dropout rate is high, and you're in school, and they're like, that's why you shouldn't hang around with them inadvertently, then you have a balance. Man, because you said, this is what you said, because we have to, do what we have to do. What is do what we have to do? Because I believe what we have to do is rooted in this room.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? But it has to be a declaration. It can't be separate. It can't be, I have to jump.
And it's not a dichotomy.
Right.
Loving being pro-black don't mean you anti-white.
Right.
My best friend is a white boy.
Right.
My best friend is a white boy that you saw, you'd be like, that's your best friend. He was the one white dude at my wedding and was the best man, and people was like, he came to Brooklyn, and he ain't like one of them hip-hop white boys either. Like, but it's no dichotomy.
Right.
Loving myself, I have a responsibility that's rooted in those who paved the way for me. This is about making sure that my great-great-grandkids who aren't born are going to be here. My Jewish friends know that, like, I have a commitment to my Jewish community and everything else comes after. Like, I don't mean I can't be friends with you. So I would say, because I remember going to college and then going back to the hood and not being comfortable, just feeling like my pants were too tight, just feeling like I was mad corny. But you got to create community right here. Because this room right here, if y'all get it right, you got educators, you got lawyers, you got doctors. You don't know who the person you sit next to is going to be. I met him at Penn State, and he called me back 5 years later after Great Debators. Brian, remember all them talks we used to have? I got a platform, let's roll, bro. You don't know who you're going to network with.
And he asked me all the time, he said, well, Nate, just want to make sure you want to do this because, this could hurt you. If the wrong person finds out that you're, disrupting the system, in a sense,
right,
it may affect your job. It's like, at the end of the
day,
I'm a man of God. If that's my path, then that's my path. You know what I mean? If it's meant for me to, if me telling the truth means that I'm going to be pushed down this way, I guess I gotta go. It's the reason I don't want to get into politics. I don't know any politicians or political science majors, but I believe that I can't compromise. Just like me and Brian, I campaigned for Brian. We used to debate on it. I mean, for Obama, we used to debate on it. He was like, man, I believe in it and I understand what it can do, but I also see what it can hurt, how it can be used against us. In the same way King was used against us and used to divide the people. And how they used, who they used against Paul Robeson?
Jackie Robinson.
Yeah, Jackie Robinson. They say he was a communist to pick a side.
The voice to get rid of Marcus Garvey.
Right. It's like, where's your compromise? Where's your price? And the thing with me is like, when you have kids, I mean? I just don't want to have to look at my kids or my kids to get involved with something and me to say I could have done more. When I look at two of my best friends, or my cousins, are in prison. One's in a work camp and one's in prison in Chesapeake. Right? We grew up together like, peas and carrots every day. Every single day. One day, my mom said, I ain't gonna be able to put you in college. Mom said, why don't you wrestle? You can beat them white boys. That was it. He was like, you gonna let a white boy beat you? It was like that whole thing. Now, we're strong. We're gonna be strong. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try it. I tried it, got a scholarship, and within a couple years, prison sentences for everybody near my age. You know what I mean? So I owe it. You know what I mean? If the second we walk into a situation, it was like, well, am I going to do this or am I going to do this? We need to walk in through that lens, and everything we do come through that lens. Everything. Coming here, going to a game, there should be, like Chris Thomas started the Young Black Professionals. A friend of mine at Penn State started this email listserv. Young black professionals. And then all it is an email listserv saying what everyone's doing outside of college. They graduated, or what's going on at Penn State.
That's a network.
And it's a huge network. Now you'll be like, does anybody know, there's a guy named this that's looking for a job in engineering. Anyone know anything?
Brian needs money for his Saturday school.
Exactly. Boom, boom. And all of a sudden there's this community, you know, like you said, Harriet Tubman had the internet. She could just say, all right, email, encrypt the email. It's a wrap.
if Malcolm X could put his speeches in a verse behind a beat, what could that have done? So we got to be thinking about, you know, when you know your history, the glass is half full now. All of a sudden. How many of y'all see yourselves as leaders? Well, guess what, y'all? The state of the community is a reflection of the leadership. So this society will have you believing just because you're a lawyer, you're a leader. That's bullshit. Leadership is service.
Thank you.
So I used to be mad at Michael Jordan. Why you ain't doing more? Oprah, why you ain't doing this? Until God gave me the revelation, I got to be my own Michael Jordan. When I see the young brother on the train wilding out, I'm a black man. I'm accountable. I'm going to build institutions. Because I can't control what y'all do, but I know what my purpose is. I know what when we were at Penn State University, because of these divisions, we started a community circle that met every day. We called it Sankofa, which is now our nonprofit organization. Just by bringing people together every week to discuss a different issue that plagued our community, we got representation from every student organization. It grew, 20 people, 30 people. Now all these people who were having divisions realized they had divisions based on nothing. I don't even know you. Now the football player is building with the Kappa, and we talking about now we're pouring libation to acknowledge the ancestors before. Before you know it, by the end of the term, after like 6 meetings, we decided we were looking at racial issues on campus. We said, wow, let's vote our own people in office. Now we got community, right? Let's start a Saturday school for the high school students. Now we got community. When the death threats started coming, we had a community. We ended up creating the state of Pennsylvania's first Africana Research Institute. We got millions of dollars. We brought in over 10 new faculty, students, just by coming together on a regular basis and dialoguing about our condition. So what I say to you is, you can be creating community right here. And what's so great about the community right here is all of you guys are going to leave here and go into the world and be in position to create institutions. So this is a powerful room right here. This brother's going to make the Nat Turner story. This brother's going to tell, in a movie, going to tell the story of slavery that has not been told. He's going to educate like the same way Spike did with Malcolm X, right? So you never know who you're sitting next to, and you do not know how much power is right here in this room if you guys can channel it.
And also explain how it doesn't mean you have to be broke.
It don't mean, check this out. If you have a really innovative mind, because here's the problem. A lot of my friends, me and my wife's friends, my wife is an attorney, a lot of her friends that went to Harvard Law School and whatnot, they're the first generation to go to college, so they go and get that $120,000, $130,000, $140,000 outside of college, right? You got people want to do that. They ain't mad at that. But check this out. If we spend $900 billion a year and get less than 2% of our own money, you can make a lot of money by providing a need to the community. He doesn't take movies where he's tap dancing, but he gets paid to come and do lectures at colleges. So he can have speeches that tap into the consciousness of our people and get paid and don't have to sell his soul. We got partners who are active, we ain't saying no names, that are taking degrading roles because they got to pay the bills. He don't got to do that. All we got to do is do some lectures and leave people with something substantial. So you pay for a quarter of the price that you're going to pay T.I. to come. You can have somebody who's going to leave you with something tangible. Okay? So the whole idea is you can make money. You don't have to, you can still take care of yourself financially, but create something that allows you to take care of your people in the process. I ask my students this, how many of you know black people who get paid well to deal with the issues in our community? I bet you can name the people on one hand. You know, you got your Tavis Smile. You got some people who are proactively getting paid to help us, but people got to think about it. Oprah, one of my kids, Forrest Whitaker, right? But if I ask you another question, how many of us get paid by making our condition worse? The rapper, I mean, we can go on, 50 Cent, we can go on. Why is that? Because the plantation was such that everybody was working for master's profit. And we've never had an opportunity to understand that and deal with the plantation we're still living in. We have the power. Racism paralyzes us.
And if we don't do something now, be, us 20 years from now. If we keep going at this rate, they're saying 50% of us will be in some form of police, whether it be prison or be jail.
Which is already the case in D.C. 49% of black men between 18 and 35 are on some form of criminal justice control.
That's where we're going. So when we talk about which side we want to work on, we have to think about the future and what that means for us and our family. Because I would assume people want to get married, want to have kids. What are we providing for them? What kind of mechanisms are we putting in place so they don't have to deal with what we deal with now? It can't be the great escape. We can't sell out to that great escape syndrome.
You are responsible.
Right.
My wife has all these lawyer friends who make all this money but can't find a man. Because there is such a shortage of black men. Like, you got over 1 million in prison. So you got all these women who got the American, that got everything. I went to school, I got my law degree, I got my PhD, I got my money, got my car, I bought me a house, but I can't find a man because the men who are professional in mine got 10 women, right? So you got all these, so everybody is impacted by this. We have a stake in especially for those of us who consider ourselves leaders. You don't consider yourself a leader, okay. But don't be fooled into thinking just because you got your college degree and got some cheese in your pocket that you a leader. A leader is a servant. Dr. King gave his life. We come from a history of people who gave their life. And I'm not knocking Barack Obama because people play different positions, but how dare you put him on a Bob Marley, Dr. King, Malcolm X shirt. Them people were unapologetically black and got murdered for what they were doing, for challenging injustices. What he's doing, I'm not knocking, because that's hard too. People hate him, but most of us in this room are comfortable being the only black and know how to assimilate and take care of ourselves in that environment. I've seen that before. Dr. King, knowing you're going to die and getting on that podium and still giving that speech, that reminds me of Jesus. That reminds me of Jesus. That reminds me of Jesus.
How do you think we can break the barriers? And also, like, dealing with code switching, like, we have to act a certain way around them. How do you think we can break that thought process?
I teach it. I teach my high school kids how to code switch because if you speak the way, the problem in the schools is the things that are valued in the public schools, like, will get your ass beat in the streets. If I use proper language and live in Bed-Stuy and I leave school, and they're like, if I don't know how to dress like this, if I don't know how to go in my pocket and say, what's good, family? Like, I gotta know how to be well-rounded, but be my same self, right? So when you're going on your interview or when you're adjusting to the dominant culture, see, we used to get that education when we were segregated, because you had a black teacher who lived in your neighborhood and said, now, you know when you go over there, you better do this, so let's be real about it. You have to code switch. Stay yourself, but you need to do that. You need to understand that. Now, until you get in a position where you don't have to. See, one of the reasons everybody wants to be a rapper or a football player is because those are the only individuals who can be themselves and still get respect by society. See, my students have never seen black people like me and Nate before they meet us. They've never seen people who are black and speaking black stuff, but then they see us around white people and we're still strong and still cool. And then from around white people, we still talking about racism, and then you see us later, we having lunch with that white person. They've never seen that I can be black and an intellectual and well-spoken and still about my people and can still exist in the hood. So we have to let people know. See, people think reading is acting white because they haven't been exposed to black literature. So I think we can be, I don't code switch as much anymore because I'm able to be kind of one person in everything I do. Go ahead.
I would even say that entertainment and athletics, sometimes, I know shit isn't the only profession that people can be themselves, but when you have, that black male from, the hood or whatever that decided to pursue entertainment or athletics, well, if he doesn't know how to manage his money, then he's still a slave.
That's right.
Because,
absolutely.
He's being, pampered, ran over.
Absolutely.
In the industry too, so.
Absolutely.
And not only that, but making music they don't want to make, or talking about stuff they don't want to talk about stuff that they haven't went through. But when people are taking this as surface value, this is what it is, then I feel like those stereotypes are perpetuated by white people and our own people. Like then it becomes okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I just want to make a quick comment too, because, and I'm gonna put my feelings out here too, because a lot of students, I feel, on many campuses across this country I've talked to. Next week I'm going to the Association for Black Culture Centers. It's a national conference. And many of our students, various Black Culture Center directors and multi-culture center directors, we feel like our students don't utilize the resources that are available. You know, I have a program called Chameleon Theory that teaches exactly what he just talked about, right? And the only people, and again, I ain't trying to get on my soapbox, but the only people that really listen to that is the Mizzou Black Men's Initiative, because I teach it to them, you know. And then there's Black Studies. How many people are involved with Black Studies program? You know, and that's what I'm saying. That's another resource. Academic Retention Services, Black faculty and staff. There's a plethora of resources available to teach you guys a lot of what they're talking about, if we'll simply utilize those resources that are available.
I just think we also have to deal with the idea of assimilation. Until we deal with that, then you can have all the resources in the world and they will never be dealt with. Because you'll think, what do I need to? In the same, think about the majority. When you are the majority, what do you gain from even touching those things? You know, it's like the brother back there raised his hand like, yeah, I'm involved, but what does you gain, really, that you can take, that in your mind, because we know what it is, if you take it into the workforce, you can take it into finance, what do you gain? Nothing. So if we're trying to assimilate to that mentality, then what are the benefits we see from even learning about ourselves if we're trying to escape ourselves?
Right.
So we have to deal with that first. Once we understand that there's something to be done in our community,
And there's
then
value in it.
and there's value in it.
We don't
Absolutely.
need to, with Bed-Stuy, we don't need white people to come and take over Harlem before it to be valuable. We can do that. You know, I'm a part of a movement that moved back. I'm in the hood. I mean, we bought a house in the hood because we want our community, as opposed to only seeing white people come back and now it's nice. Instead of gentrification, we're going to do renovation. Like, but we ain't going to displace the people who are there. We're going to, the young brothers on my block, the Bloods, I'm getting them in school. I don't want to be scared of my own people. And it's don't get me wrong, I don't like gunshots, you know, but at the end of the day, you know, we're the only people who can clean up our closet, right? So assimilation, Carter G. Woodson, the miseducation of the Negro, he talks about, and this is so clear, and I bet you it's like this in every community. In my neighborhood, we got black lawyers, doctors, all of that, and projects. If you wake up early in the morning, all the black professionals are leaving to get on the train to go to Manhattan. All of the first and second generation immigrants that don't even speak English are getting off the train to open up the Chinese restaurant, the laundry store, the grocery store. All of the businesses in this historic black neighborhood, Bed-Stuy, B-I-G, right? We don't own anything. Because, and Carter G. Woodson talks about it, he says that we get an education and we want to stand next to white people and have a suit. First generation immigrant opens up a peanut store, gets rich, makes more money than you, brings his whole culture in, and after a few years has more political power and economic power than the people who have been there for generations. But what do they have that we don't have? They know who they are.
And the proof of that is you go to California, you know, LA, you see Chinatown, Koreatown, everything town, and you don't, and for us,
The ghetto.
The hood. You know what I mean? There's no control of these resources that we're the biggest consumer. And we're channeling none of that. They talk about in the Jewish community,
Bounces 12 times $1 before it
12 times
leaves.
$1 before it leaves. And for us is what?
Man, it's like, what, 5 minutes? The minute we get the money, Nike get it, McDonald's get it, everybody gets it, but us. And our most brilliant minds, rather than creating a new shoe that the money can go to us, takes the salary and goes and works for Nike. I'm not saying that that's wrong, but if you go work for Nike, develop a vision so you can have your own. We need you. If we own the store, all them kids selling crack outside the store could be inside the store, working.
I think on the collegiate level, a major problem is like, we're told we have to be so competitive, and that's true. But we're like, I've heard teachers tell black students like, you have to be better, smarter, more active than all the white students. And to me, that's kind of saying like, okay, so the black students aren't equal. You're saying that we have to try even harder to be better than somebody based off race.
You kind of
And then on top of that, I know we are so about ourselves here that we look at other people who might have grown up in less fortunate areas than us, and like, well, I did it, they can do it. Not everybody's on the same level financially and things like that. We need to extend ourselves to other people and wonder like, why are there so many liquor stores in the ghetto?
Right.
Why are there gun shops and all that kind of stuff like that in the ghetto?
But then again, that's a structural problem too. That has
Right.
to do with like our economy and just it being set up that way.
And even to be more specific, slavery, the distribution of wealth. It has not changed. It hasn't even been tilted, right? If we still live in a system that was created in slavery, in the sense of the economic wealth of this country, and we understand that system exists, then when we come into college, we understand that we can't just say, well, which side? We have to say that something has to be done down there to fix what was done. But we can't wait. Freedom, what is it? Freedom will never be just voluntarily given by the oppressor. It has to be demanded.
This system working for some people.
Right.
I think too, like historically, I mean, money was never really ours. So I mean, we get in these positions where we are making it, we are some businesses, but like I said, we don't know how to handle it because I mean, it was always like free labor.
That's right.
I mean, you come from white people come from you hear trust fund babies, or they have a grandparent or aunt or uncle in time to give them a car to cost time for them. Or, they come from families that have businesses like that.
And can I add to that? And just being white.
Yeah,
Let's not forget. There's a benefit. That's not, it's your fault. It's not a finger, but it's a realization.
Privilege.
America, that's a privilege based on our history. We all need to understand that.
I was going to say, even growing up in California myself,
What
I
part?
remember, huh?
What part?
Oakland.
Oh, from Sac. What's up?
Okay. I remember, people that I was in middle school that were working for, Korean kids, Cambodian kids that were working for their parents, and now, they own the business. So, I mean, these are things that were passed down to them, but it was still the decision of their mother or grandfather or whatever to be that change or to implement that business so that their kids could, work.
And I wouldn't even say it took that much of an effort in the sense that they knew who they were. It's like a lot of people, with immigration, we're the only people that didn't come here to explore America.
Everybody came here for capitalism, but we were brought here to be capitalism.
Beast the burden.
Worked harder than anybody, but never saw the connection to our labor. So when I see those Chinese first-generation immigrants, and I ain't hating, when they own all the stuff in my neighborhood, they've been doing that since jump.
Yeah.
Look at the Chinese food plates. I I've lived in 5 cities. Everywhere I travel, my inside joke, look at the plates on the Chinese food. They're all the same in every city because there is a culture. When you come from China and you want to open up a Chinese restaurant, you go to the same place to get the manual on how to make the General Tso's chicken, and you buy it because that's culture. We didn't have that.
And the thing about it is there's so many people that are dependent on us as a consumer.
That's right.
It's funny because in our schools, we don't focus on culturally responsive education where the kids see themselves, right? But like Ryan was talking about, you were talking about it earlier, that McDonald's understands.
They understand. That's why you got a flatbread chicken wrap.
I'm
I'm loving it. Now a slang is okay when they want your money.
Yeah. It's real, but it's true.
Am I right? People dancing for some chicken.
Oh, you would. Go ahead.
Me?
Well, my quick question is that I'm a senior, graduating May 13th, 6/30.
Better say that.
And the biggest problem that I see is that once people, I'm in the broadcast field, and once people move up to the upper levels, they don't want to help the younger freshmen and the sophomores. And so I'm in National Association of Black Journalists, and we have a mentor-mentee program. And they're saying, well, can you take 4 mentees? And like, I'll do it. But the problem is that there are several black people in the J school, but they just don't want to help the younger children. So,
But why?
how do we?
Because they don't see value.
Right.
It's assimilation. It's in every aspect of our lives. It's been, even with the Native Americans, assimilate, face extermination. Assimilation or extermination. That is where we are. It's like when I was coming up, I assimilated. In every way that I could to be a young person coming up. When I realized I was good at sports, and then my senior year, the summer before my senior year, a white guy was like, I want you to, come to my school. And I had a full scholarship to come to this school. I went from all black school in Churchland to all white school in Chesapeake, right? And how could I not help but feel like, I'm lucky they saved me? How could I not feel that way? Not knowing who I was, right? Looking back at my other families being like it's a lottery, right? Because we look at it, the second you take away the history, like when people say, pull yourself by the bootstrap, racism, and call them out on it. Because if you don't think about history, right, and you say, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, then you have to say to yourself, damn, I don't even have no shoes, I'm just inferior. Because not all of us are born with bootstraps. You understand what I'm saying? It's like knowledge of self becomes a comfort of being who you are. You don't have to be apologetically black. That's what I love about acting. It's like, yes, I'm in entertainment, but I'm in entertainment to let other people know you don't have to be in it. I can tell truths through different roles. let you know that this was possible. This is history. It's what I do and finding the common ground in it that can reach other people. And I feel like that is what the answer is. But even now as we listen, when we leave, we're going to be hit with a situation. We're going to walk out, we're going to say to ourselves, I heard a lot. Seriously, what does that mean to me? You know? Are we going to become apathetic and be like, well, I'm going to get mine? Because that's what it boils down to. Because I guarantee you, maybe I don't want to guarantee, but we should do an experiment and ask some of those people that are volunteers, well, we have these 4 white kids we want you to mentor. And just to see how they all feel about it. It's the doll test. The value that's put on you when you feel like, what? White kids, people want me to teach? You know, it changes things. How do we feel about ourselves? How do we feel about what we see when we look in the mirror? You know what I mean? Because right now it seems like we're just pulling for straws. We represent the minority amongst our minority. Most of us ain't in school. And count how many brothers and how many sisters there are. This right here is pretty close to representative to what it is like in the country. As brothers, we are lagging behind. But why? Anytime they're doing stop and frisk, when we're 8, 9, 10 years old on the way to elementary school, we're touching the penal system over and over. And by the time we're 13, 14, that becomes our rites of passage. In Africa, we have rites of passage. I've been to Africa twice. And I know a couple of brothers that they get rites of passage on some old, like, go out and don't come back for a month in the wilderness. So there are rites of passage that they know when they become a man. And why is that important? Because they have it in every other culture. Bar mitzvahs, quinceañeras, right? When you turn 15, you're going to do it. You are a man. You are a woman. And they know it. Right? But that's culture. How do you destroy a person? You take everything that means anything. You take their language, you take their religion, you take their education, then they're blank slate, then you just dump them in Western culture. So everything we have is from being dependent on white culture. Everything. And it's so safe that we're terrified of going back and learning more. Most of us, this is not the first time you've heard this stuff. You've heard people like, yeah, I know, in Africa, yeah, I know. There you go talking that black stuff. I mean, we know people, right? But why? Because it's hard. It's hard to say, man, we're going to go into that. It's to take away what is safe. You know what I mean? It's like the whole, you know, when the master would rape the slave and there was a baby. Now, they changed the laws. We just did, you know, a speech for political science major. Talking about, well, we're going to talk about policy. Let's talk about all these laws that they have. They changed the law. Chattel slavery is different than any other slavery in the world. With beast of burden, 3/5 of a person. They changed the law because we're 3/5 of a person. When you were born from a slave master, right? You took on the name of, you took on the position of your mother. That's never happened in history before. You understand what I'm saying? You have sex with a slave, you have a kid. Hey, now that kid is in your family, right? But what they did was, no, that ain't me. And they made laws that said no white man could ever rape a black woman because her body lends itself to promiscuity. Do some research. When you read this, you're going to be angry. Not that you're like, oh my God, we should just be ashamed, all of us, white and black, of what happened. Not that we're pointing fingers saying, let's lock them up. It's not about that. It's like just being honest confrontation about who we are, where we are, and what we endured. Because if the brother that's baking the steam, don't care about nothing, just in his music all day, pants sag, I don't care about anything, if he knew the struggle for real, and not just Jesse Jackson coming up and giving a speech, or Al Sharpton coming and giving a speech, and it being done, that's it. You know, because anytime now a brother gets killed, what happens? It's down to a science. Let's just say there is an oppressor. Let's just say I'm in control, and I want to keep order, right? In the same way the cotton thing didn't get out, and something happens, and I say, okay, all right, this is what's happening right now. How do I want to handle this situation? Just make sure it doesn't get out. There are things that are suppressed for the betterment of the country. But those are the things that need to come out. But it takes sacrifice. And the biggest difference for me with the civil rights movement now is that people back then were willing to sacrifice. They were like, no way. I got pictures with people. The man, you ever seen a picture and he's standing there and the dog is biting his stomach? You know, when you come tonight, you'll see it, right? It's when they had to sick the dogs on people when they were protesting. And what's amazing about that picture to me is that if a dog was running at me, right, and they snapped the picture of right when he got there, you know what it would look like? Because it wouldn't look like me standing there through the bite on the stomach. Sacrifice. But we have to collectively understand that we have something to lose and something to gain. You know? So I don't know if that answers your question. But go ahead.
where do you start? Like when you're trying to learn about these things? So I feel like in school we always start with, like you said, like slavery. Like this is from when we on the boat. But like, where do you start if you want to learn like holistically, like about the whole culture?
Well, first of all, it has to matter to you as much as your political science book. You know what I mean? It has to mean as much to you, or if not more, than the test you got to take tomorrow. It has to be in tune with what you're doing, side by side. Just like charity doesn't work when you just say, on Saturday I'm going to come by and read to a kid and be out. If you're on board with education, you have to be on board with education. For me, it was reading. Like, I guarantee you, when you start reading this stuff, it becomes so fascinating because you never knew. You know what I mean? It's like, perfect examples like somebody says, you have a sister? What do you mean? You have a sister you never knew about. Something happened and adoption, she just couldn't take it. You have a sister. How bad would you want to know? You know what I mean? Know that sister. And would you have to ask, well, when did I start? You know what I mean? You may ask that. But it's not going to make you have to think, well, I don't want to learn because she might not like me. You're going to want to know. Because you'll see yourself in her. You want to see manner. Especially if you have a twin. You have a twin? I've always wanted a twin. I've always wanted an identity. You understand? It has to be at the forefront of your mind. For me, there's a list of books I've read. I've read a book called Post-Traumatic Slave Syndrome. Faces at the Bottom of the Well. The Miseducation of the Negro. The Debt. Randall Roberts. What does America owe the black community? There's a number of books you just start reading. Yes, matter of fact, we're going to give you a website before we leave, and you can look up all the books. We have a book list on the website. And you can read these books. I know you're probably like, well, I got all this other reading to do. And maybe you're not serious. Maybe you're cool with just doing what you do and doing you and getting yours. But if you're serious about community change, then we have to be serious about preparing ourselves. Because the hardest thing about standing up here is facing people that don't know and have been conditioned to do everything they can to go against what you're saying. So when we stand up here and say stuff, we have to be able to answer questions, but we have to be able to answer the question of skeptics. You know what I mean? Like, we were in the all-white political science class. One guy raised his hand and asked something, well, classism and policy. Dr. King said, if you don't, any effort to deal with policy regarding our people and racism without looking at the roots of slavery is doomed to fail. There's a speech you need to read called Where Do We Go From Here? Dr. King gave it in 1968, I think April, before he died. It was after the I Have a Dream. So when you see people walking around with t-shirts with Dr. King and President Obama say dream realized, you need to have an opinion about that. Because if that dream is realized, then everyone that you know from back home that ain't doing nothing is inferior. It's as simple as that. And I ain't inferior. And my people isn't inferior. And we have to be on one accord with that. We can't drink the Kool-Aid. You understand what I'm saying? What? Comments? Anything? Go ahead. Okay.
You know anything about that? Every time I say it, I get discussed and what have you. And I'm actually in the honors college, and I thought it interesting because they had a dinner reception for us and our teachers, and it's always only a few black students, and how we are the minority, and it's so hard to it's not hard to relate, but it's hard to see that in a lecture hall of 300, 400 people, you only see about not even a quarter. It's like 15 people who are of African American persuasion. And then again, going back to me being from St. Louis and being from the hood, it seems as if some, not all, but some of the students who graduate high school, who actually do make it out and do go to college, they seem to be having the sense that they don't need to do, like what you were saying, they don't need to come back and help. And what the young lady was saying, how they just go out and do it for themselves. And I think that's very interesting about how we are conditioned. And even though, since I'm from the hood, I see that there's a strip club on every single, in one little area, it's 5 of them. And I find that hard to believe, and I don't understand why.
Why do we perpetuate that? Why is it important that we hate our family? Why is it important? Anyone? Go.
Okay, so I read a book that actually addresses that issue. It's called, don't laugh, it's called Why Black Men Love White Women. And they address the treatment of black women, and it goes back to what you were saying about how the master could have sex with the black woman and it wouldn't be considered rape. The whole study was about basically how it kind of angered black men because they couldn't touch their women. They couldn't even look at a white woman, but their women and their wives and daughters were being violated. So it
black women like it was their
Dysfunction.
choice.
And that's why a
So,
lot of
we
black men left
exploit.
their families. The whole family structure, the single parent, that's rooted in something, y'all. It ain't just because we hate each other. That's rooted in dysfunction. We've been displaced continuously, ripped apart. And then when Reconstruction happened, there was so much injustice with economic reason. And a man, it's like, why is it that the woman is the cornerstone? Big mama and grandma. Why is it? You know, my father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather all passed away when I was young. You know what I mean? Why is it that black men die so young and the women are the cornerstone of the family? Because they were the ones that had to go and act. Imagine you need something, right? Your son's sick, right? And you have to ask your slave, you have your slave wife to go and ask the master for some medicine. Something that you don't have access to but can make your kid better. But you know that your wife, she goes in that house and asks for something, she's in debt. And she's going to have to deal. What does that do to the relationship? So many men, there was so much black flight amongst men. When you do the research, you realize because of that, the trauma that was happening was too much. And the men had that, some of them was like, well, she'd be better off without me. I'm like the child. The man was emasculated to the position of a child. It was like he was one of the children she was taking care of. Because he couldn't say anything. He couldn't do it. There's a movie right now, I read a script that's being made. And the opening scene is about this family. It's a family picking cotton. It's a young kid and a man and a woman. The man comes out to the cotton field, the white man, passes his wife on the porch and says, you know, Mary, come on. Takes Mary in the shed. The man, the slave, Mary's husband, is looking but can't look. They go in there. He hears his wife scream, but still picks cotton. The son is like, Dad, what the hell? What's going on? Just do it. They're picking cotton. She comes out, right? Fixing her skirt in tears, whatever. Come back to pick up. The white man's walking by, and the black man happens to look him in the eye. And on the spot, he took out a gunshot. Right in front of his family. Now we say, what? Oh my God. Common. This was common. What does that do to the relationship? You understand what I'm saying? So it's like a child that's been molested, but don't remember. And then they grow up and have all these messed up relationships and become clingy to all these men and all these situations. Then maybe become strippers. Can't find it, and you don't know what's going on. Right? We're taught to say, oh, she's just a jump off. I'm going to get mine. Right? But when finally someone has the resources to give her counseling, she comes in and they say, oh, you know, what's your first memory? And then all of a sudden, the memory comes back. The things that she's blocked out. And all of a sudden we realize, wow, you were what? Your uncle did what? Wow, that's trauma there. And she can't start healing until she deals with that. That's what we are. You know, so when we talk about black men and black, we talk about that. There's been dysfunction that has been heaped upon us. The relationship is damaged. We need to fix it.
Relationship with self, relationship with brothers and sisters, relationship with brothers and brothers, relationships with sisters and sisters. We're dysfunctional.
And then my uncle is a pure advocate of African American studies, and he talks about how the system that's been enforced, like with welfare, and how if there was a man in the house, they wouldn't give you any type of assistance, and so they would have to hide the man, and then eventually the man was just put out of the home. So I think that's interesting.
There's no need. There's an article that was talking about in the 100 Years of Slavery. It was so crazy. And when you read through this, there's all feel these emotions. But it says, talking about a lynching, it said the South obviously has no more need for the Negro. And it talked about how, why? Because they're all hanging from trees. It was like, all right, you can be our slaves, but if vagrancy, your lips are too big, string them up. And they brought food. You know, I read the history of the word, you know, picnic. A lot of people are like, picnic comes from picnicking. It doesn't. It's French. It comes from well before 16th century. But it became adapted to it. It was given that. Lynching was given that term. Because what they would do, bring food to pick at. Pick, P-I-C-Q-E, was the French word. But basically, you bring something, not a full meal, because you get the meal probably after the lynch. Right? But you come, and what they would do, commonplace, cut off the genitalia. That was one of the first things. And they wouldn't just kill you right away. You think, man, kill you before you do that. Right? No, it's one of the, they would let the mob, it was talking about Henry Smith, Google the lynching of Henry Smith. It's a mentally handicapped kid, right? Accused of raping a wife, which was always, you know, there was a common through line, right?
That's why the penis was cut off.
Right, right? They put him, because what does that signify? the black penis, it's strength, it's masculinity, but it's also the tainting of the white race. It's white supremacy.
The black penis has the potential. Now, if you ever read the ISIS paper, I don't know if this is true, but Frances Cress is, well, I can't remember her name, but she says the Klan burns that cross symbolizing the black man's penis, because the black man's penis, anybody it touches turns black. So segregation was rooted in the fact, listen, it sounds kind of far-fetched, but segregation was all rooted in the fact that they did not want white girls and black boys to interact, because you would have a bunch of Obamas running around. And there was this fear because they had raped so many of us. See, all these colors we have in black people is rape. Like when we brought here, we were black, but all of us have white blood. Most of us, nowadays you have interracial relationships, but generally speaking, this is rape. So there was always a fear that what was done to us, if black men had a chance, we were going to do it to them. So you have this fear, and every time they lynch us, they cut off our penises.
Instantly.
This is deep. I remember hearing this when I was young. Like, man, that ain't right.
Yeah.
But research it.
Watch the pictures, and the pants are always down at the ankles. And it talks about it. Without Sanctuary has all the postcards of the lynching. But with Henry Smith, what they did was they get hundreds of people coming from food, they bring their children, you can see pictures, right? And what they would do, and what they did with Henry Smith, is they paraded him around on a party float. On a party float, here's this black man, tied up on a party float, about to be lynched. Everyone's cheering, and it talks about it. Just Google Henry Smith lynching, and just read about how it went. Then after, when the crowd was in a frenzy, and they were talking about how they were jovial, and there was excitement, then they took, and the crowd got a hold of him, they tortured him. After they tortured him, they burned him, and then when they were dead, they took pieces. And that was common. And without Sanctuary, one of the postcards I saw, it had a lock of hair. It was a postcard lynching nigger Henry, whatever it was, and it had a lock of hair under the glass. It was this guy, without Sanctuary, decided to go and find all the postcards. So what they used to do is they'd have lynchings, and everyone would take pictures. And when you read one of the things on something without Sanctuary, it says, for a nickel, you got a shot and a picture with the body. It's like target practice. So, for a nickel, you come to these lynchings, and then you stand in line. You get a shot, take a picture, you shoot the body, take a picture with the body, you get to take it home. And they make postcards out of this. This is what we did. This is not to go around hating anyone, but understanding what we've endured, what's happening, and how it's shaped where we are right now.
See, that's why people throw cotton.
That's real.
That's why people are comfortable throwing cotton, like, at y'all. This is the roots of this tree.
And we shouldn't be surprised. But once you know that, like when you said, what can we do? Start reading. Once you know that, then your lens changes, the focus changes, everything you see is different. And you're able to recognize, wait a minute, that's white supremacy. Wait a minute, that's Willie Lynch. Call somebody out on it, and they can't get mad. You notice if you're right, you're like, wait a minute, brother, this is kind of like divide. They're trying to be divisive. Let's just squash this right now. It takes a little bit of your pride. It's a sacrifice.
Unity takes practice.
It does.
Harriet Tubman had a quote. She said, I would have been able to free more slaves had they known they were slaves. See, when Harriet got away, she made it out of hell. She goes back to get her husband on the plantation, and he sells her out, right? Her own people was looking to get that reward so they can get some extra chicken, right? What was it in this woman that made her go back 18 more times? Can you imagine that? You make it through hell, dogs on your back, and you make it to go back? What was it in her that made her keep going? I can see maybe one other time, but after my wife sold me out, I might not go back. But what was it about her that made her continue to go back? She knew that she couldn't blame her people for being sick. They were been made into slaves. I don't blame them. Like all my kids, I see them, they thugged out, they blood, crip. I could be like, oh, you loser. You're messing up our... But I know that there is an injury. I'm from Cali. I remember when in 1988, 89, when everybody was just blood. I watched a whole generation of people who were in identity crisis. NWA came out, and we all want to be blood and crip and dead. In prison still. I just had football. So you don't break someone's leg and then blame them for being crippled. We've been crippled. We're crazy. You know that scene with Denzel where he brings up Willie Lynch? And y'all remember that scene? That's the deepest scene of the movie because Henry Lowe represents the angry black male. Henry Lowe, he's asking people about their father. So tell me about your father. Well, you learn later in the film, he don't know his father. He hurt when you bring up his father, because his father was a slave who was killed. So part of his anger is he don't got no father. So Denzel, bring up your father. You tell me about mine. You tell me about yours. Now it's the confrontation. Now in most public schools, what happens in the conversation?
Get out.
Get out. Now you're suspended. Done.
Learn
right?
ability because
But what does Denzel do? Denzel walks up on him and breaks down Willie Lynch and tells him why he's crazy. I know why you angry, brother. Let me tell you where you got that anger from. You ever heard of Willie Lynch? Breaks it down, and then he tells him, my job and the job of the faculty is to help you to find and take back your righteous mind because you have lost it. We have to teach our people we are crazy. But guess what? It's not our fault. It's not our fault we're in this condition. But guess what? We are the solution.
The only solution.
So it ain't our fault, but we're the solution. Because we don't want to stay in victim status. Blame, blame, blame. Right? It's not our fault that we hate our hair, that we hate our nose, that we hate our head. We've been brainwashed. But we are the solution. Can't nobody, if all white people were to leave tomorrow, we'd still be fucked up. Excuse me. Sorry. We'd still be messed up because of the internalized hatred we have in ourselves.